The cord to the cloud, don't, yeah, made that mistake. Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Dannon Rosenthal. I am indeed a past president of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West, and I'm so thrilled that all of you have taken the time to participate in the Berinsky program. It's, to me, one of our best tools for welcoming people in. I did not grow up in any community in Greater Metro West. I am from Newport, Rhode Island. How does a girl from Newport, Rhode Island wind up in South Orange? I married a boy in law school who was from New Jersey. And I grew up someplace where everybody had to do everything. You didn't choose between doing the synagogue or sisterhood or B'nai B'rith women or federation. Everybody had to do it all because otherwise nothing happened. So when I moved out here after 8 years in the city, I just decided that I needed to get involved. And I started somewhere else first and then wound up at an event at a beautiful home in South Orange about how to raise your incredibly brilliant children. And at the end of the morning, they showed the campaign video, the UJA campaign video. And all of a sudden I remembered that this is what I care about, helping Jews. And so that's what I've been doing ever since. And when it comes to helping Jews, I find it very hard to say no. In fact, unless I really can't be available for something, I say yes. And I have gained so much more actually than I've given, that I recommend it highly. If you can say yes, say yes. So in all of the positions I've held at Federation, I often get asked, like, what's Federation's purpose? How did it get started? Where did Federation come from? So part of what I want to do tonight is help you understand that. So I'm going to do a little visual aid for you, and forgive me because this is how a girl from Rhode Island draws the map of New Jersey. So this is my version of New Jersey, and it's a little backwards because of the magic of Zoom. So this community, Greater Metro West, we're going to do color here. Greater Metro West started in two cities, very common story in the story of Jewish immigration. We started in Newark and we started in Plainfield. So that's Newark. This is Plainfield. And a very common story, German Jewish immigrants come over to Newark and they start a community. And by the 1850s, there are at least 3 synagogues, B'nai Jeshurun, the Mothership, B'nai Abraham, and Oheb Shalom congregation. Within 30 years, there are many, many more than that, but they're mostly centered around Newark. And with the coming of financial security and, in fact, wealth, the communities begin to spread west. So the first thing that you get out of the Newark community is you get the first suburbs. You get Maplewood, you get South Orange, the East Orange, West Orange. In fact, some of my family comes from that Western movement, from Newark to East Orange to West Orange. And then in the 50s and 60s, you get a further push west to Short Hills, Livingston, Milburn, places that for a long time Jews were not legally, but unofficially restricted from living in. Meanwhile, a little further south here in Plainfield, you get the same thing. You get the initial movement out up to Elizabeth, where schools are started, the JEC starts, and so you get that urban movement there. And then again, in the 50s and 60s, you get the movement out to Westfield, Scotch Plains, Fanwood, and you get the synagogue development there. You get the Y, you get the JCC in Central. So the institutions are forming. At the same time, there's a farming community up here in Morris, in Morris and in Sussex. So that's Sussex County. I apologize, Sussex County. And they have their own federation, but there's not, they're raising about $1 million a year, and Essex County was called, Essex Metropolitan was raising like 12 million. So they merged in the early 80s. And then there are more Jews in Hunterdon and Somerset County. And in 2012, all of this merges. But what you have is a network of agencies, synagogues, and the Federation. Now, the Federation was really formed almost 100 years ago, because in all of these little communities, all these little, in Newark and in Plainfield, and as they moved out, you had little tiny Landsman organizations where people were going, everybody was coming up to the third floor of your apartment in Weequahic or in Elizabeth, and 10 different organizations are asking you for money. Two amazing community leaders, Felix Fuld and Louis Bamberger, say this is not working. And they create a council of charities that eventually becomes what we think of as the Federation. And the idea was that in order to not be competing, and in order to have an equitable distribution of resources to the agencies, that a community council would come together and make those decisions. Because once you raise the money, you have an obligation to distribute the money in ways that are fair, equitable, and to make sure that the organizations get what they need. In addition, what happens in the 1930s and certainly in the 1940s is an understanding that we have to raise money to take care of Jews overseas and to help build the state of Israel. It's not even a state yet. And certainly after World War II and the establishment of the state of Israel, that becomes a huge focus both locally and nationally for raising community dollars. So what does that mean for today? How does that work today? I think what I want to talk to you about is an old saying, an old tagline from when I started doing this work. We used to say, and it's still true, that no gift touches more lives. That when one person makes their donation to the UJA annual campaign, that they become part of the power of the collective to do amazing things. I wake up every morning and I know that my gift is making things happen, taking care of people here and on the 6th floor of an apartment building in Kiev and in Israel that I want to see happen, but I cannot do alone. So that's what how Federation came to be. Let's talk a little bit about Federation today. So Liz is going to start sharing the screen. So we kind of reduced this to these 3 sentences. We care, we build, we save. So what does that mean? How do we care for people? We care for people through organizations like Jewish Family Service, which 160 years ago was the Hebrew Orphans and Widows Association. We build by things like, we build through some things like Berinsky. We build through things that create community. We build through things like Mitzvah Month that's coming up in March. Places where people can encounter a vibrant Jewish community. And we save the world one person at a time every day. I don't know if you guys have seen this. There's a mailbox where you can contribute money to help people in Texas, the people who are so affected by the freeze that they endured. And that means all of us and people in federations around the country can help make a difference. And not just for Jews, but for non-Jews as well. Where there's a need, if we can step in, we step in. But we save people by providing food, by providing medicine, and by providing hope, to let them know that they're not alone, that Jews anywhere in the world are not alone. We like to say that there isn't a Jew in the world that we can't reach if they really need to be reached. And that's an amazing statement, 70 years after the end of World War II, with Jews behind the Iron Curtain, that we can reach any Jew who needs to be reached. And again, it's the power of the collective, that even beyond caring for the people in our community, building a vibrant Jewish community here, saving Jews that need saving here in terms of shut-ins, kosher meals on wheels, that this extends beyond Greater Metro West, that without the power of the collective, all of us acting together, we would not have been able to conduct the airlift that rescued Jews out of Ethiopia and that is still ongoing. We would not have been able to move the Jews in the former Soviet Union to Israel, to this country, to free them from not being able to practice their religion. These are the kinds of things we do every day, quietly, sometimes without us even noticing. But how? So we do it through a system of allocations, which you'll hear about at some other meetings. We do it through our agencies, both local and overseas. So what's the role of the Federation? So first of all, there's direct annual dollars. We raise the money and we distribute the money. 19 local agencies, 3 overseas partners. I think in the course of this, the Berinsky experience, you will hear from many, many of those partners. We are also a convener. We bring organizations together to share ideas, share resources. We didn't used to communicate all that well, and now we do. So bringing together things like the Metro West Cares, Metro West Able, and things like our Synagogue Leadership Council. If you're a member of a synagogue, the resources that are available through Sarah Siegel and her efforts have really changed the way synagogues operate in Greater Metro West. And then there's the structural support. And this is where I like to borrow a phrase from my friend Ira Steinberg, who says that federation is really the grout that holds together a beautiful mosaic, but that without that grout, no mosaic can stand. So things like being there behind the scenes for our agencies in terms of insurance and other financial kinds of support. But specifically, I want to talk to you about something called the Emergency Fund. So as part of its decision-making every year and doing allocations, we set aside money every year that we can for the Emergency Fund. The Emergency Fund was established really so that in the event, God forbid, a disaster happened overseas, that we had to say, God forbid, rescue the entire Jewish population of France and get them to Israel, or that there's a terrible war in Israel and we need to take all of our resources, there would still be money left to take care of our local agencies. Never in my life did I imagine that we would be taking money from the emergency fund, $1 million from the emergency fund, to use locally. But that's what we did, because we are the umbrella agency. We are the umbrella for those 19 local agencies and 3 overseas partners. So there you go. So these are all of our agencies. And there's a whole process that you'll hear about, I think it's maybe next week, by how we make these allocations, and the fact that we really talk with our agencies about what is the impact they want to have and how are they doing that enables these allocations to be done on more than just a guess and a hunch. The fact of the matter is, though, that saying something's an umbrella agency just because a bunch of agencies sit within its control, or not control, but within its funding, is not what Felix Fuld or Louis Bamberger or Sarah Cussy envisioned 100 years ago. What they envisioned is that what we really are is the safety net underneath. That's what we've been. That's what federation does. That's why we exist. So that's a lot of information. What I want to share with you now is a video that I think will speak to today's concerns and show you just how closely federation works with our agencies in difficult times like this, as well as every day.